and to our final news conference of the year. We got a new guy in the room. What's your name?
Edward Smith.
Edward Smith. Welcome. Hope to see more of you. So we'll go over some stats, and then we'll give you some updates on some of the recent events. We've got both myself, Deputy Chief McKinley, and Deputy Chief Bates that will be giving you some of the updates throughout this. So to kind of give you an overview of where we stand as we come up on the end of the year, still looking like we're making progress on all of our violent crime. We'll point out that we had one homicide last week that we did make an arrest on of a 15-year-old girl who was charged with complicity to murder and robbery. I know we've talked a lot about juvenile crime, but when you have a 15-year-old girl that's involved in a homicide, that's always concerning. But very proud that those detectives were able to make an arrest related to that. And so hopefully we can start to bring some justice to that family. I'll also point out that over the last week, we were able to make 2 more arrests in homicides, as well as 3 other indictments. That homicide unit is absolutely working their butts off to make sure that they're bringing justice to families, and that's what we want. And then it's not just homicide going out and putting cases on people, but then you've got the violent crime unit up in CID, as well as officers out on patrol that are making these arrests and actually finding these people out on the street and taking dangerous people into custody. And so they're doing outstanding work, and we hope to continue that trend in 2026. So here's kind of some of our stats to give you some background on where we are citywide as far as our activity. So while our calls for service are down, you can see our self-initiated activity is way up citywide. That means that officers are going out there and making contacts with people. They're doing the work that we're asking them to do. And arrests are up, but citations are down. And then our warrants served. So those are people who have already committed a crime or who've been in the justice system and not showing up to court, or they've absconded in some way. And officers are going out there and actually putting in the work to find them and bring them back into the justice system to make sure that they are held accountable. And this is exactly what we want to see out of officers with the activity that we're asking them to go out there and do. Now, when it comes to our crime plan, you all are familiar with our sustained focus improvement area. So I just showed you kind of the city overall crime as well as our activity. When we look at just our sustained focus improvement areas, so the areas that we identified as being the 5 with the biggest room for improvement, and you just look at those, total crime in those areas are down 20%. That is outstanding across the board. And so there has been a concerted effort by officers as well as other city agencies to make sure that we focus on these areas and bring that crime down specifically in those. I think recently one of you reached out to inquire just about Esquire Alley because it had been so violent over the past few years, and we hadn't had a homicide in Esquire Alley in this year. That's a big thing. Those officers in those SFI areas understand the importance of that focus. And to give you an idea of some of those things that are coming out of those areas, we are getting lots of guns and lots of violent people off the street, and that's an impact. And what that does is that keeps criminals looking over their shoulder because they never know when an officer is going to pop up and interrupt their criminal activity. But it's also not just about violent crime enforcement. It is about building those relationships. So when you look at that difference in those numbers that I showed you between arrests and calls for service and self-initiated activity and citations, what you see is there are a lot more self-initiated activity than there are just traffic stops or stops for criminal investigations. And what that is that's officers going out there and contacting people in the community and making sure they're building those relationships, being visible. That's one of the things that we consistently hear is that the public wants to see officers. They want to have contact with officers. They want to be involved with what we're doing. And so that's what we're asking these officers to go out and do. And they're doing an outstanding job of it. It's not just limited to those SFI areas, but pointing those out. So we will be making a change next year to one of the SFI areas. So we had one that was on the border of the 6th and 7th Division, but we've recalibrated what we're looking at. And so we'll be adding the California neighborhood in the 2nd Division to an SFI, making that an SFI area. So we can make sure that we're focusing on that and bringing crime down and changing those neighborhoods for the better. With that, I am going to turn it over to Deputy Chief Emily McKinley, who is going to give us an update on a very violent subject that we were able to take into custody over the weekend. Deputy Chief.
Thank you, Chief. Again, my name is Emily McKinley. I'm one of the deputy chiefs here for LMPD. And I want to talk to you all about Winthrop Taylor. I think all of you all have done a story on him over the past couple of days. We made a pretty significant arrest in the past few days for him, and he's involved in a lot of things that have happened in our city over the past week. So I want to walk you through a timeline of that. This timeline and this arrest was possible because of good police work, good communication between multiple agencies. J-Town Police had a major role and played a major role in making this arrest possible, as well as other LMPD agencies. So we had K-9, our 6th Division was heavily involved, our 5th Division was heavily involved. A lot of our drone unit and our air unit, all of that provided support to make this arrest possible. Our robbery unit ultimately was able to get a confession from Mr. Winthrop, and I know our public integrity unit has an investigation that involves him as well. Right now, these are just some of the charges that he is facing. These are just LMPD charges. So he has been charged with attempted murder of a first responder, robbery, unlawful imprisonment, fleeing evading police, criminal mischief, wanton endangerment in the first degree, reckless driving, and operating on a suspended license. And I will caveat that robbery is a robbery in the first degree. It's multiple carjackings that he did commit. And so we'll walk through a timeline there. Okay. So first, on Thursday, December 18th, there was a carjacking in the 300 block of Rock Cliff Court. This is in the area of Goldsmith Lane and Bardstown Road. And so what happened in this carjacking, he approached a female at gunpoint, took her vehicle and forced her to get into the car with him as he drove that vehicle. He then drove that vehicle. At this time now we're entering onto Friday the 19th. So we're shortly after midnight. He drove that vehicle to Arbor Point Place apartment complex, and that is in the J-Town Police Department's district. It's here in Louisville, but still outside of our jurisdiction. J-Town Police manages that area. But they did a drive-by shooting, or he did a drive-by shooting in that apartment complex, fired several shots in that parking lot. There were several calls for service from people who live in that apartment complex who called that night to report hearing 20, 30 gunshots being fired, unknown what's going on. So J-Town Police responded to that area. LMPD also assisted them with some aerial support from our drone and air unit. At the time, they thought maybe somebody had fled into a wooded area, so they focused to their area or their search of a wooded area over there. But then a few minutes later, they learned that he had driven to the Speedway, Taylorsville Road and Stony Brook Drive area, which is still in the J-Town area near the Arbor Point Place apartment complex. He fired shots at a man that he got into an altercation with at that Speedway. So he fired shots at another victim at the Speedway. That victim fled in the victim's car. So the victim fled in his own vehicle, and the suspect pursued the victim, chased the victim from the Speedway after he shot at the victim. So now, shortly after midnight, he continues to recklessly chase that victim in the vehicle to the area of Bardstown Road and the Waterson Expressway. They enter into the 3000 block of Bardstown Road. Now the suspect is still chasing that victim that he shot at in that car, while two officers were conducting an unrelated traffic stop in the area. So the two officers are in the 3000 block of Bardstown Road on a traffic stop. And now the suspect and the victim are entering their traffic stop area. The officers hear and respond to gunfire from those two vehicles. An officer returns fire. That victim from the Speedway stops his vehicle, and he had sustained 2 gunshot wounds to his arm. The officers give him aid. The suspect continues to flee down Bardstown Road. Again, that is an ongoing investigation. That is an officer-involved shooting that we reported on last Friday. We expect to release that body cam video within 10 business days. So the suspect continues on. He enters the 300 block of East Broadway. He ditches the vehicle that he was originally in and carjacks another man at gunpoint. He also orders the original victim from the Rockcliffe Court carjacking to get into this new carjacked vehicle with him. So he's now in a new suspect vehicle. Officers put out a BOLO or a be on the lookout for this vehicle. So officers are aware that this new carjacking vehicle should be observed in the area. They get information that it may be in the area of Bardstown Road and Goldsmith Lane. Officers spot that vehicle unoccupied. And while they were setting up some surveillance of that vehicle, they see a suspect, Mr. Winthrop, enter that vehicle. Officers get into a short vehicle pursuit with Mr. Winthrop in that new carjacking vehicle, where he ultimately loses control of that vehicle and crashes in the area of 264 and Bardstown Road. Mr. Winthrop then flees on foot. He pitches a handgun in his foot pursuit and enters into an apartment complex nearby where he crawls into a crawl space. Officers set up a perimeter. They, get many resources available to try to locate Mr. Winthrop that's in this crawl space of this apartment complex. They try to hail him out, try to call him out. Ultimately, one of our canine units enter the crawl space and is able to apprehend Mr. Winthrop. During that apprehension, Mr. Winthrop is able to toss bricks and rocks at the canine, injuring that canine. He also is able to cut the water lines of the apartment complex, causing that crawl space to flood. In doing that, he takes the canine who is trying to apprehend him and puts the canine's head under the water. He tries to drown the dog in the apprehension. Our officers are able to intervene and intercept that and are able to pull that canine to safety and make the arrest of Mr. Winthrop. Again, this is some really excellent work by all of our officers. It's outstanding communication amongst all of them. We were able to get this dangerous criminal off of our streets. We do not deserve to have people like this on our street. Violence leaves a lasting impact. It affects not just victims, but it affects neighborhoods. And I think you saw that in the chief's presentation about SFI areas. It affects communities. And our priority will always be to protect this community from people like Winthrop Taylor. Just want to give a shout out to Canine Inyo. This is the canine who entered and apprehended and arrested Mr. Winthrop. We are glad she's doing well. She's still being monitored to make sure she doesn't have any injuries or prolonged issues from being put underwater, but she is expected to make a full recovery. You know, she is a true hero here. She crawled into that crawl space. It was dark. She was assaulted by bricks. She was nearly drowned, and she was still able to make that apprehension and stay in the game. She was able to help us remove this extremely violent individual from our street. And, you know, I know it's Christmas, and I hope that Santa's watching, but I think she's a good girl. She made the good list. I think she's going to get some extra tennis balls in her stocking or Kongs or whatever treats she wants for Christmas. And I also think it's pretty clear that Mr. Taylor's on that naughty list, and I hope he gets a lot of coal in his stocking this Christmas. With that, I'll turn it over to Deputy Chief Bates, who will talk about a memorial service that we have coming up.
Okay, I'd like to remind you all about tomorrow we're going to hold a remembrance ceremony for Detective Deidre Magadote at LMPD's 2nd Division, which is located at 3419 Bone Avenue, tomorrow at 10 a.m. The public is welcome to join us as we mark 7 years since she was tragically killed in the line of duty on December 24th, 2018. She was a great detective, loving mother, and a loyal friend. She is greatly missed by our fellow officers, family, and friends. If you aren't able to attend, the ceremony will be live streamed on our Facebook page. Thank you. I'm now going to turn it over to Chief Humphrey for questions.
Appreciate that. And before we get into questions, just kind of recapping what they both just talked about. I remember when Deidre was killed on Christmas Eve several years ago, and many officers who were not working reported to work so that they could cover the street while her friends and her squad and everything handled taking care of Deidre and her family. And during that time, we actually had an active shooter that nobody knows about over off of York Street. And it was really awesome to see officers going into the face of danger while they have a partner who has just been killed. And then, you know, you fast forward to this and you hear about officers and a dog going in a crawl space to get an extremely violent criminal off the street. Like, I know the LMPD jobs tag is up there. It's a pretty freaking awesome job. Like, where in the world are you going to be able to go get somebody like that off the street? Where else can you do the things that we get to do to serve the public and get violent people out of our society? Like, that's pretty awesome that in those conditions you have people that go out here, put their lives on the line in order to protect other people. And that's really what this job is about. It's about service of other people, whether that means hanging out with little kids or going into dark spaces with violent people to get them off the street. Absolutely amazing. I'm jealous that those officers still get to do that type of work, and I have to sit behind the desk and all I get to do is talk about it. But really proud to be able to work with the men and women of LMPD, both civilian and sworn. So with that, I will turn it over to you all for questions.
On the William Taylor incident, there was some concern about the way that he was apprehended on Friday. I guess that middle of the night. From the original reporting, it seemed like that the officer that may have seen the road rage incident may have been further away from the situation, and gunfire was sent that way towards where that altercation was happening. And there was some concern about keeping the public safe while also apprehending someone who you all were pursuing. Do you have any comments about that and how that was done? Was there anything that you were concerned about?
So I think the question is, and I'm trying to clarify because I want to make sure I understand your question. Concern about how we apprehended the suspect?
Yeah, if I'm not mistaken, this was Friday. From the original reporting, there was an officer who saw that there was a road rage incident that was happening, and the officer sent gunfire shot at those two cars that was happening, but that was in a public area, in a public space. The officer may not have been close, like right on the situation. So a lot of those details are going to have to come out. Officers still have not been interviewed, so I can't speak in too much detail about that. We will be able to give you a lot of those details next week when we are able to release the video. But no, I'm not concerned about it. As Deputy Chief Bates said, and I think you were here for the officer involved video release last week, right before this happened. We don't get to determine the time or place that violence is brought to our doorstep. And so those officers handled it seemingly appropriately. You know, when a shootout comes rolling down the street, you don't get to choose whether or not you want to be involved in it when you're the police. And so those officers had to respond to a tense, uncertain, and rapidly evolving event that happened right in front of them in order to make sure that they kept themselves and others safe. So I think you'll see a lot of clarification about how that happened when we're able to walk through that body-worn camera video. can you say at this time whether anyone might have been in immediate danger at that time when gunfire was sent?
Yeah, so was anyone in immediate danger? So yeah, when people are shooting at people in public, there's an immediate danger.
Right. So with that, being that you say that you guys have to judge the situation as it comes, how do you mitigate that when there is a situation similar to that that's unfolding? It's in public, it's people around. A bullet could be sent and it could hit someone who's not involved. How do you mitigate that?
So yes. So the way to mitigate the risk to the public is through accuracy. try to hit what you're shooting at and not have those rounds go anywhere else. That being said, we're not going to be perfect in gunfights, and we don't get to determine that all the time. And so that is part of the risk of having a society that is filled with guns, and we're going to have gunfights that are going to be amongst the public. And that is what we try not to have, but we don't get to determine that. So
We can talk a little bit about teenage violence and youth violence. I wanted to ask if you guys were looking at any initiatives, or if you all were implementing any initiatives to address teen violence. And as we close here out, kind of talk about where we can stand to make improvement.
right. Teen violence, I think, is appropriately a concern of everyone. The thing is that I think the younger the people get involved in violent crime, the harder it is going to be for the rest of their life in order to become a productive member of society. So we do want to get to those people, those young folks, a lot earlier. Part of what we've done is I think you've seen a revamping of our GVI program, our Group Violence Intervention, having Josh Crawford come over as the director, moving that under the Criminal Interdiction Division, and really focusing on getting to those people that we've identified that might be around or susceptible potential victims or perpetrators of violent crime, and getting to them and trying to get them out of that lifestyle ahead of time. I know that the state legislature is working on some things to deal with juvenile crime, and I think that has more to do with enforcement than prevention. But it is a combination of things that's going to ultimately impact juvenile violent crime.
As a twofold to that, what's your take on holding parents more accountable for the actions of these teenagers who are involved in violent crimes?
So what's my take on holding parents accountable? And I think you've got a couple of different buckets of parents. There are parents out there who are absolutely trying to do the right thing, and their kids are out of control. And those are the ones that we need to find and we need to focus on for getting them help and resources in order to deal with those kids. You're talking about loving parents who find themselves at their wits' end often. Then there's the aloof group that are less involved in their parents' life, or their child's life. But the ones that I'm concerned about when it comes to enforcement are the ones that are actively knowledgeable and or participating, because we know that there are many kids that get involved in a criminal lifestyle because their parents advocate for it. And so we'll use everything within our power to make sure that those parents are also held accountable for those actions of that kid.
There was also another officer involved shooting in New Russell neighborhood last week as well. Doing some reporting after that incident, there was an extreme concern in the community about retaliation, people not wanting to share information because they're scared of perpetrators coming back, and I guess in a sense acting on them sharing information with whether it's the public, police. Is the police department doing anything with the community in any neighborhoods like that to increase trust in law enforcement so that you can resolve crime in the neighborhoods and Louisville?
Yeah, so good question about what we're doing to increase trust and people being fearful of retaliation. I mean, I don't think those are new concepts, right? I think that's something that we've talked about for the last 30 years, is a fear of retaliation. And the best way to avoid retaliation is to get these violent people off the street. And so that's what you're seeing in our SFI areas, is that going out, that proactive policing to try to prevent these crimes from happening, as well as those proactive contacts to build that trust and those relationships on the street. And so I think officers are doing that. When you look at the data that we've been able to collect, people are believing in the job that we're doing, and they are trusting that we are doing this job well, more so than they were a year or two ago. So I think we are making progress in that area, but that's always going to be a place that we have a need for improvement, is building those relationships and making sure that people trust that the police are going to keep them safe.
Chief Humphrey.
Guys, let's make sure everybody gets a chance
Yeah.
to ask questions. Thank you.
Chief Humphrey, I had a couple questions on flock cameras. I know recently Louisville Public Media reported that LMPD did not disclose locations when they asked for them through open records. I wanted to see if you could explain to me a little bit more, or explain publicly more about that decision. And I have a second one I can ask you now, or I can wait.
Well, I'll probably have to ask you to repeat, because
All right, well,
but-
first of all, yeah, why?
so why don't we just disclose the locations of flock cameras? And I know other agencies do, and that's their prerogative. But that is a very valuable investigative tool that allows us to investigate and locate criminals. And so giving out the location of those devices to criminals so that they can actively take efforts to avoid them would not be a wise tactical or strategic move.
And second, Flock has been in the news recently, both for its help in apprehending Brown University shooting suspect in New England, but also recently for cities parting ways with the company, citing data privacy concerns, public blowback. Cambridge, Massachusetts recently parted ways with Flock, saying the company was installing cameras they didn't know about. Has Louisville had any concerns about Flock as a company?
So any concerns about Flock as a company, and I'll address this kind of globally as this type of system. We are always trying to make sure that we are taking the next best step in order to protect people's privacy and data. And so we have been in conversations with Flock about how we improve the data protection within their systems and some of the steps that they're taking and some of the steps that we're taking. So that's always a concern, and I understand that it's a concern for the public, and that's something that's going to keep progressing. I think anytime you get a new piece of technology, this is kind of always the case, is that sometimes the technology outpaces the parameters and some of the safeguards that you put on it. And I think Flock has fast caught up to a lot of that. But each community is able to make those decisions on their own. And I think I feel very comfortable with Flock right now. And I think it's an outstanding tool that has allowed us to take many violent people off the street. So,
Chief, we've been reporting on an increase in copper wire theft across the country. Is that something that LMPD is seeing here in Louisville as well? And what is LMPD trying to do to address this?
So the question is about increased copper thefts. And that's actually a really good question, because what we've done, and Deputy Chief Bates is one of the people who sits on this task force, is we have a metal theft critical infrastructure task force made up of city entities as well as some of the companies around here. That is an absolute concern. And so we've been able to put some more parameters on some of the metal recyclers, to the point that what we've done within Jefferson County has had such a good effect that they are looking at it statewide. And so part of it is the enforcement end, and part of it is taking away the profitability of metal theft. It is a real concern when you have people stealing wires out of critical infrastructure that, you see stretches of the highway that are black because they don't have street lights. And so one of the things that critical infrastructure task force did was they got a bunch of tampering devices put on the street lights on the expressway. So anytime somebody breaks into one of the lamp poles, it alerts us so that we can go and respond to that immediately. And so we've been able to make several arrests just based off of that. So that is something that we are focusing on and we're very aware of. So
GKSB just released their citation information in Louisville Metro for the month of December. I just wanted to see what your thoughts were on their expanded presence here in Louisville.
So thoughts on KSP's expanded presence in Louisville. I welcome it. We know that there is a direct correlation between traffic citations and serious and fatal car accidents. And so we want to slow that traffic down on those major thoroughfares as well. So I'm very thankful to the commissioner and all of his people that are willing to help us here in Jefferson County. So.
And does anything change? Last week, that was the first officer involved shooting scene that I've been at in a while, and I saw the sheriff's office.
Where you been at, Conroy?
Been missing out.
Oh.
Do you expect to see the sheriff's office was helping with traffic and things like that? Do you expect the sheriff's office presence to continue to grow with interim sheriff David James? So
about the sheriff's office presence growing, I'm excited for what's going on over there right now. I know they want to get back into doing enforcement work, and so we're very welcome to collaborate with them, and any resources that we can use, whether they're state, local, or federal, to keep people safe, we'll try to take advantage of those. So, thank you all.
Thank you.
You didn't ask any questions. You've been gone for too long.
Thank you, Chief. Merry Christmas. Happy
You
New
too.
Year.
Don't try to.
That's the airdrop.
Sorry to dominate the question so early on. I was asking.
No, but you know what, I just like you guys, I just want to make sure everybody gets a chance, you know, I'm limited time. So when you get to the third question, somebody has had their first.
Happy holidays.
I just want to make sure everybody gets it.
Oh, thank you very much.
No, I will tell you though,